You have been carrying a monster inside you your entire life, and every single thing they taught you, in school, in church, at the dinner table, was designed to make sure you never looked at it directly. They called it your dark side. They told you to suppress it, pray it away, meditate past it, apologize for it. They dressed it in shame and buried it so deep that you forgot it was there. That is the lie they fed you. Because Carl Jung, the man who mapped the architecture of the human psyche more precisely than anyone before or since, understood something that your therapist, your pastor, and your self-help guru will never tell you. The darkness you have been running from is not your enemy. It is your undeployed power. And your refusal to face it is not virtue. It is cowardice dressed in the language of morality. There are 7 specific things Jung warned us about when it comes to the shadow. The 7th one will explain every self-sabotage, every collapsed relationship, every moment you looked in the mirror and did not recognize yourself. If you're not ready for this, close the video. Go back to the crowd. But if you want to know the truth about what lives inside you and how to use it, then stay. Revelation 1. The shadow is not what you think it is. Most people hear dark side and picture violence, rage, evil. They picture the villain, not themselves. That is the first mistake, and it is a catastrophic one. Jung did not define the shadow as your capacity for harm. He defined it as everything you were told to hide. Your ambition, when ambition was punished. Your anger, when anger made the adults uncomfortable. Your sexuality, your pride, your hunger for power. All of it, buried layer by layer, year by year, into a psychological basement you were instructed never to enter. The average man spends his entire life performing the version of himself that was approved by others. He mistakes the mask for his face. He calls his suppression being a good person. He has no idea that everything he buried is running his life from underground. Jung called this the personal shadow, the rejected self. And modern research on what psychologists now call emotional suppression confirms what Jung intuited a century ago. Suppressed psychological content does not disappear. It accumulates. It festers. It erupts sideways in forms the conscious mind cannot predict or control. Napoleon understood this. His hunger for domination was never hidden, never sanitized. He channeled every shadow instinct, the rage of the outsider, the ambition of a man told he did not belong, into a force that rewrote the map of Europe. He did not bury his darkness, he trained it. Your first instruction is this. Take 1 hour this week and write down everything you have been told is wrong with you. Not by enemies, by people who claimed to love you. That list is your shadow's inventory. Read it without flinching, because what you refuse to see in yourself, you will project onto the world around you until the day you die. What you cannot own, owns you. And the next revelation makes that even more dangerous. Revelation 2. You are already projecting, and it is destroying your relationships. Here is a question they never asked you in school. Why does that person bother you so much? Not hurt you, not threaten you, bother you. The colleague who is too loud, the friend who brags, the stranger whose confidence irritates you for reasons you cannot name. You have written them off as the problem. You have never once considered that your reaction to them is a mirror. This is what Jung called projection, one of the most destructive and most invisible psychological forces operating in human social life.
When you cannot acknowledge a trait in yourself, you will see it and despise it in others. The man who cannot admit his own arrogance will call everyone else arrogant. The woman who has buried her own desire for power will claim everyone around her is manipulative. You were brainwashed to believe that your strongest moral reactions point to the flaws of others. The truth is that your strongest moral reactions point directly back at you. Robert Greene understood this mechanism deeply. In the 48 Laws of Power, the architecture of power is built on understanding what people cannot see about themselves, because what they cannot see about themselves is where they are most vulnerable, most predictable, and most easily led. Julius Caesar saw this in the Roman Senate. His enemies, men who accused him of tyranny, of ambition, of lust for power, were themselves consumed by all three. They could not recognize the coup they were staging because they had convinced themselves their own power hunger was righteous. Caesar, who faced his own darkness with open eyes, survived far longer than their projections predicted. The practical instruction is cold and simple. The next time you feel an outsized, irrational irritation toward someone, do not express it. Write it down. Ask yourself where that trait lives in you, unnamed and unacknowledged. The answer will be uncomfortable. The answer will also be correct. Revelation 3. Your persona is a prison you built yourself. Alongside the shadow, Jung identified the persona, the social mask you constructed to be accepted. And here is where it gets surgical. The persona is not inherently the problem. Every sovereign needs a public face. What becomes the problem, what becomes the cage, is when you forget it is a mask. When you begin to believe the performance is the person. The average man has worn his mask so long, he can no longer find his face beneath it. He is the nice guy who resents everyone. He is the strong leader who collapses alone at night. He is the positive thinker who has not processed a genuine emotion in a decade. He has achieved the ultimate tragedy. He has fooled himself. The psychological concept here is what researchers call identity fusion, the collapse of the boundary between role and self. When your social identity becomes your entire identity, any threat to the role feels like a threat to your existence. This is why some men cannot retire, why some leaders cannot step down, why some parents cannot let their children leave. The mask ate the face. Machiavelli saw this from the opposite angle. He wrote in The Prince, "Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are." He was not giving permission to deceive others. He was issuing a warning. Know the difference between what you project and what you are. Because a man who cannot distinguish his mask from his face will be destroyed the moment circumstances demand he remove it. The Spartan warrior culture understood this. The Spartans did not train men to perform courage. They trained men to be indifferent to the performance of courage, to have it so embedded in their actual structure that the mask and the man had no distance between them. That is not fusion. That is integration. Your instruction: identify one role you play in your life where the performance has become the identity. Name it. Write it on paper. Now ask,
If this role were taken from you tomorrow, who would remain? That answer is where your real work begins. Comment below. I face my shadow. Revelation 4. The golden shadow. What you worship is also you. You are still here. Good. The fragile ones already left. Now we go deeper, into territory most people will spend their entire lives refusing to enter. Jung did not only write about the dark shadow, the rejected weaknesses, the buried rage, the suppressed shame. He also identified what he called the golden shadow, and this one cuts differently. The golden shadow is everything you admire so intensely in others that you cannot believe it exists inside yourself. The leader you idolize, the artist whose work makes you ache, the individual whose confidence you study like scripture. You have placed them outside yourself. You have made them other. You have made them unreachable. That is the trap, because what you worship in others is a projection of your own unlived potential. The reason their power moves you is because something in your psyche recognizes it as yours, exiled, undeveloped, waiting. You do not admire what is foreign to you. You admire what you have refused to become. The psychological framework here is what Jungian analysts call individuation, the lifelong process of integrating both the dark and the golden shadow into a whole self. Without this integration, you spend your life oscillating between self-loathing and hero worship, never realizing both are symptoms of the same avoidance. Cosimo de' Medici understood the power of cultivating what others projected. He positioned himself as the quiet, unassuming banker, while the Florentines projected brilliance, wisdom, and power onto him. He understood that what people idealize, they will follow. He used the golden shadow of an entire city to build one of the most enduring dynasties in Western history. Your instruction: write down 3 people, living or dead, who you admire with an intensity that borders on painful. For each one, identify the specific quality that moves you. Then write these words: "This lives in me undeveloped." Because it does. The worship ends when the integration begins. Revelation 5. The anima and animus. The war inside every man and woman. Jung went further. He said every man carries within him a repressed feminine psyche, what he called the anima. Every woman carries a repressed masculine psyche, the animus. And when these inner figures are denied, projected, and unintegrated, they do not disappear. They choose your partners for you. The man who cannot access his own emotional depth will be magnetically, compulsively drawn to emotionally volatile women, because they are living out the emotional life he has buried. The woman who cannot access her own assertiveness will be drawn to dominant, controlling men, because they are carrying the authority she has exiled. This is not poetry. This is pattern recognition that modern attachment theory, developed through the research of John Bowlby and later Mary Ainsworth, confirms across thousands of studies. The relational patterns you repeat are not accidents. They are psychic projections seeking integration through collision. Galileo, in exile and under house arrest, wrote his most dangerous work because he could no longer hide behind the persona of the compliant scholar. The external suppression forced internal confrontation. He had no mask left to wear. What remained was pure, undiluted intellectual sovereignty. Most people only find that clarity when everything is stripped from them. The sovereign finds it voluntarily. Your instruction: examine your last 3 significant relationships. Identify the recurring quality, the one that keeps appearing in those you choose. That quality, positive or negative, is yours. Reclaim it, because you will keep selecting the same archetype until you do. Body. Revelation 6. Shadow work is not healing. It is weaponization. Understand this clearly, because the self-help industry has distorted it almost beyond recognition. Shadow work is not therapy. It is not crying into a journal. It is not honoring your inner child while nothing in your external life changes. Shadow work, done correctly, is the most ruthless act of self-mastery available to a human being. It is the process of locating every piece of psychological power you exiled, dragging it into the light, and integrating it into a functional whole, so that you stop being run by forces you cannot name and start operating from a structure you have consciously built. The 99% engage in one of 2 failures. They suppress the shadow and become brittle, predictable, and unconsciously self-destructive. Or they indulge the shadow. They call their rage authenticity, their cruelty honesty, their manipulation intelligence, and they become dangerous not because they are powerful, but because they are uncontrolled. The 1%, the ones who operate with genuine psychological sovereignty, integrate. They feel the rage and decide how to deploy it. They recognize the manipulation impulse and choose when it serves and when it doesn't. They do not perform virtue. They do not perform darkness. They operate from a position of full internal visibility. Robert Greene built his entire body of work on the psychology of people who had not done this work. People whose unintegrated shadows made them predictable, exploitable, and ultimately defeated. The 48 Laws are, at their core, a manual for navigating a world full of people who are being run by psychological forces they refuse to acknowledge. Your instruction: identify one recurring self-destructive pattern in your life. 1. The same argument you always start. The same opportunity you always sabotage. The same moment you always retreat. Name the shadow impulse driving it. Then ask, what would it look like to integrate this, not eliminate it, but direct it? That is the beginning of sovereignty. Revelation 7. The man who does not integrate his shadow becomes it. This is the final warning, and it is the one Jung issued most urgently. The man who refuses to face his shadow does not remain neutral. He does not stay safely mediocre, harmlessly unaware. He becomes possessed by it, slowly, invisibly. The nicest man in the room accumulates decades of suppressed rage until one day he is unrecognizable to everyone, most of all, himself. The moral crusader, the loudest one, the most righteous one, is always the one with the largest unexamined shadow. The witch hunter is always the witch. History is littered with men who refused this confrontation. King Philip IV of France destroyed the Knights Templar, not because they were corrupt, but because they held the power, wealth, and psychological authority he had never developed within himself. He projected his own shadow onto them, called it righteousness, and burned them alive. Decades later, the French monarchy collapsed from the same internal rot he refused to see. What you will not face in yourself, you will eventually destroy in the world around you. and the destruction will feel like virtue the entire time. Jung wrote that the most dangerous human being is not the conscious villain, it is the unconscious one. The man who commits atrocities while believing himself righteous. The woman who destroys the people she claims to love and calls it care. The leader who dismantles everything around him and calls it protection. You have the capacity to become that man. Every human does. The only insurance against it is the work you refuse to do. This path is not warm. I will not pretend otherwise. Facing your shadow means sitting alone with everything you despise about yourself. It means releasing the comfortable story that your failures were other people's fault, that your patterns are external impositions, that the darkness in you is an accident you did not choose. It means becoming the exile,
The wolf who cannot return to the pack because he has seen too clearly what the pack is. The man who cannot perform comfort because he has experienced the brutal freedom of truth. Machiavelli himself wrote The Prince in exile. Stripped of his position, imprisoned, tortured on the strappado, cast out from the city he had served for decades, he sat alone with the full weight of what power actually is, not what it should be, not what the moralists claimed it was, and he wrote the most honest political document in human history. Because he had nothing left to protect, no persona to maintain, no shadow to project. He was already in the abyss, so he mapped it. This freedom is cold. It will cost you the relationships built on your unconscious performance. It will cost you the comfort of the crowd. It will cost you the pleasant lie that you are already whole. But it is the only freedom that is truly yours. You made it here. That already separates you.
Not everyone can sit with what this video asked of them. Most will watch, feel the discomfort, and return to the comfortable numbness of their unexamined life. They will not integrate. They will not face the basement. They will continue to be run by forces they refuse to name. You are not them. The work Jung described is the work of a lifetime. It is not a weekend retreat. It is not a journaling challenge. It is the slow, relentless, surgical process of becoming a conscious human being in a world full of people sleepwalking through their projections. If you understand what this means, if something in this video struck not as entertainment, but as recognition, then subscribe. Not because I asked you to. Subscribe because you are done being run by what you cannot see. Subscribe because you are ready to face the full architecture of what you are. The next video goes further, into territory most channels will not enter, because the algorithm does not reward what makes people genuinely uncomfortable, only what keeps them comfortable enough to stay asleep. You have been warned.